Hey, Team BCN. Thanks so much for joining me for today's podcast episode with Whitney Clay, Integrative Medicine Program Coordinator. In today's conversation, Whitney will talk about her work at Bluegrass Care Navigators and the new Legacy Art Circle. Whitney, thanks so much for joining us today.
I'm really glad to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this conversation so very much. So excited to get to do it right now. How long have you worked at Bluegrass Care Navigators?
You would think that wasn't a trick question, but I was hired initially in 1995 as an art therapist to develop programming and provide counseling support to families where we had children. So that's where it started. And I was doing a lot of art therapy and we developed our first camp and did those kinds of things. And then my wayward path, I went home for a little bit to be a mom and I job shared, but the bulk of my time here was spent as a grief counselor. So I worked with individuals and families through our grief care program for many years, and then left again and have come back in this exciting new role.
Wow, that's awesome.
I know, right?
I know. Well, I love how, even though you left, I love hearing you say that you came back, right? Because a lot of people that I've talked to, they've either done what you've done, left and come back, or they've just stayed,
Yes.
and I just love that.
And it's so funny. I remember saying to my supervisor, I need to go home and be with my young children. And she called me about 6 months later and said, are you ready? Are you ready? We have this small pocket of money. We have this small grant. I just want you to do this one little thing. And I said, okay. And so I did that. And then along came another little thing and then another little thing. And then she said, what are your next steps? And I said, well, I told my husband that I needed to go back to work when my daughter was 3, and she'll be 3 in January. And so I need to start looking for employment. And she said, well, come back. And so that was that. Yeah, it was just great. I never really felt like I left.
That's awesome. I love that. How did you come to work at Bluegrass Care Navigators the first time?
The first time. Oh my goodness. I was working for a mental health program and covering Cynthiana. I was working in Cynthiana, and they had a really tragic event where a middle school boy died. And I happened to be working with the school counselor at the school, and she wanted to offer a grief group. And so I, in my job capacity, co-led that group with the bereavement counselor from what was then Hospice of the Bluegrass with these young middle school boys. And so she brought the grief care component and I brought the art therapy component. And it was an amazing process. And so when Hospice was ready to think about kind of branching into art therapy, she had that experience and thankfully was able to connect me. So it was great.
That's awesome.
I know. Well, and if you really want to know, she later became my sister-in-law.
No.
Yeah.
All kinds of connections happening
I'm
there.
telling you.
So when did you first become interested in, I guess for you it was art therapy, but the larger term, integrative medicine?
Integrative medicine. I think throughout my work career here with this agency as a grief counselor, it was my dream that in addition to just tapping into my art therapy in terms of program development or with occasional grief care clients, that we would really embrace the creative arts therapies and the complementary medicine tools that walk just alongside so beautifully the care that we provide. And we would have moments of that. We would have glimmers of that. One of the things I'll never forget is that we did an 8-week restorative yoga practice for grieving clients, and watching them and the way the grief in their body transformed over that time. So just I always wanted for it to happen. And so it was wonderful that our leadership also wanted that to happen. And that when the time was right, they made it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what role did you play in bringing the integrative? Am I saying that right? Is it
Integrative medicine.
integrative medicine program into being?
Well, so I came on board almost 4 years ago, and Dr. Cote and various team members, the counseling resource office and officer and other team members had put together an initial business plan for our board to bring this program to Bluegrass Care Navigators as a Fund the Need program. And so I was able to really walk right in with their business plan and take the first steps in putting together
Okay.
what we have now.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't realize because as you know, I've only been here about 6
Great.
months. So
Yeah.
I didn't realize because to me it's always been, it's
Mm-mm.
been here as long as I've been here. I didn't realize it was such a recent new thing and
Mm-mm.
wonderful thing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Very new. Very
Very
new.
exciting. Shifting gears just a tiny
Mhm.
bit. For you, what is the best part about working at Bluegrass Care Navigators?
Oh my goodness. Oh, I was laughing because I said it was my team, of course. I have a I have an amazing team.
Right?
But I think one of the things that has really struck me as I've taken this position in the agency is thinking about the way that this agency puts its values into action. And with my team, I think it's one of those beautiful combinations of compassion and innovation, right? So taking that desire to really wrap our arms around our patients and families and provide comprehensive care, the right care at the right time, and being willing to innovate, being willing
Mhm.
to kind of step out of our comfort zone and try some new things. And so that's been the ways it's been embraced over these last 4 years, and just watching has been wonderful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We talked about your interest in integrative medicine, but you started as an art therapist, right?
Mhm.
How did you come to that decision and know it was the right thing for you?
That's a great question. I've been reading a little bit about how, if we just kind of trust, the right opportunities will come to us in our lives, and we'll end up the places that we need to be. And literally that is what happened for me. So I had completed my undergraduate work in special ed and psychology and wasn't really sure what was next, and was taking a break and living in New England. And there happened to be a really wonderful art therapy program at Leslie College in just outside of Boston. And I got interested in it and was able to just take an elective, just, for fun. And it was a wonderful fit. And so then I was able to go back and kind of take some of the prerequisites and work myself towards applying as a graduate student to come back to Kentucky and study. So really was just the right thing at the right time. Yeah.
I love that. Just like,
Mhm.
because for me, and maybe some of our listeners, I feel like a lot of time I have spent looking like, is this the right thing? Is this the right major? Is this the right career step? Is this the right this and that? And just like doing what you know to do in front of you and are interested in, and
Mhm.
then it just happens.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I feel really fortunate. I know that's not the case for everyone, but it was for me.
That is true. That is yes. Yes, and,
Mhm.
yes.
Mhm.
So, one of the new things that you and your team have recently started is the 3M Legacy Art Circle. So,
That's
to
me.
get started in that conversation, just tell us a little bit about what the art circle is.
Mhm. We are so fortunate in our Cynthiana regional office to have had the support of the folks at 3M. And Mary Johan has had ongoing discussions with them about the work that we do and the ways that they can be involved. And they had a real curiosity about this legacy art project. And so we were able to share with them some of the things that our team members and volunteers and integrative medicine team have been able to do to create keepsakes and touchstones and things that have meaning for our patients and families. And they agreed to support 4 quarterly meetings in the Cynthiana area to explore some of the different dynamics in creating these projects. So really looking into what we're currently able to offer, as well as what we might be able to connect families with. We've talked about photography. We've talked about resin art. We've talked about things on canvas. We've talked about fiber arts, even paper. So looking at those opportunities to support our patients and families, both as we care for a patient as well as our bereaved families, in making a memory and supporting that connection to their loved one.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that I have a good grasp on this. So the
Mm-hmm,
purpose of this group is to train team members, volunteers, really anyone who wants to and is connected with BCN in how
mm-hmm,
to create art with
mm-hmm.
patients and families.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly it. And
Yeah.
you and I have talked a little bit about this. One of my favorite things about this is that it's blossoming, right at the end of a time when I think we've all worked in isolation. So bringing people together, my image is sort of like an old-fashioned quilting bee, so that folks come together once a quarter and they develop relationships and friendships and a way to communicate, which I think will be lovely. I think we've been missing it.
I think so too. And so what I hear is that the group is coming together to maybe bring healing to
Mhm.
patients and families, but it can also be healing to participants as well as we come out of isolation.
I think so. Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. How did this group get started?
Well, we worked with Mary Johan and Mary McKenzie and put together a proposal for 3M, and then put together a work group to imagine what might work the best. And we actually held our first meeting of the circle on Friday, St. Patrick's Day. So we came together and we talked about our purpose and some of the projects that have been undertaken in the past, as well as some dreams and ideas for the future and different roles that people might play. And then we spent some time making art together. So
Yeah,
it was a really nice morning.
yeah. Tell me about the first meeting on March 17th.
As I said, we talked about our purpose, and we made the invitation to bring others into the group. But we had a really nice mix, about half and half, volunteers and team members. And we talked about some of the stories. Well, we shared some stories of patients and families and things we had been able to do and the meaning that it had for them. So one of the volunteers had been involved in our teddy bear project. So in the past, we've had volunteers that will make a teddy bear out of a loved one's clothing. And she had made a family of 6 teddy bears. She was exhausted from teddy bear making right around Christmas time. And while she enjoyed it, and she was able to communicate with the family and to really understand the significance and the import of this fabric that they had brought to her, she was pretty worn out. And so being able to explore some different projects that might meet that need, or that people who don't have her skills could take on. I couldn't make a teddy bear. I can't hem a pair of pants. So yeah. So we talked about that. I was able to share a story about a family in northern Kentucky. The patient had all daughters and all granddaughters, and he finally had been blessed with a young great grandson, and they were just the best buddies. They were inseparable. And so they showed me a picture of this gentleman and his great grandson sitting on his lap. And then they shared with me the flannel shirt that he was wearing in the picture. And so we traced the patient's hand, and we had the family trace the great grandson's hand. And an amazing volunteer made a pillow with those hands appliqued in the fabric of the man's shirt, and she put a little pocket on the back, and we tucked that picture in. So this young 5-year-old now has, that concrete container, that beautiful memory of his great grandfather and how loved and cared for he was. Yeah.
Yeah. What a gift, not only
Mhm.
to help people process their grief, but
Mhm.
to then become a vessel of hope, maybe.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after we shared stories on Friday, then we talked about a specific project, which is a textile brooch. And textile brooches can be made out of very small pieces of fabric and other things like buttons or lace or embroidery, anything that you like, and then can be worn on your shirt or lapel. Just a really nice, again, a touchstone, a kind of a vessel or a connection to your loved one. And so we made textile brooches on Friday.
That's awesome. How long does each meeting do you foresee it lasting?
And so the meeting lasted about an hour and a half. We ran a little bit over, but that's our plan, is to meet in the mornings and have coffee and conversation and then try making something. So we talked about different projects that might be meaningful for families, talked about things that can be made over a short period of time, and also things that might be a project that takes a little longer so that we can be responsive to wherever a patient and family might be in the journey.
So I'm glad you brought that up. So how does that work? Because I'm assuming these are kind of training sessions
Mhm,
for team members and volunteers to go out.
mhm,
How does
mhm.
that, once they're trained in this area, how does that work then?
How's it going to translate? We're still
Yeah.
figuring that out.
Okay.
But I think we always have our volunteer liaisons as a part of that team. And so that person in that role can help us to identify a patient or family that might benefit. And we've kind of developed some referral criteria because it's not
Okay.
something that we can provide to every single patient that we care for. So we've looked at, what might make a family appropriate for a project like this and what kind of project would they like to have. So, depending on the patient's needs and interests, it might be that we connect them with a volunteer that goes over several visits and helps the patient to make a project. It might be that we are only able to make a one time visit and then we have that project made behind the scenes. So, we're really looking at what the processes would look like, but we're real excited about it. I think it
Yeah.
played really well. Mhm.
Yeah. It sounds really exciting. If
Mhm.
someone's listening and they would like to participate, is it still possible to join?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're piloting this in Cynthiana. We'll see how it goes. And as I said, we have some grant money that's going to let us translate a little bit to southeastern Kentucky. So we're going to try a one-time event down there in the spring. And then that will help us work the kinks out. That'll help us answer all those questions that you have so that if other people, if we want to grow the project, will know how it should look.
Absolutely. I'm really excited about this for all of you and well for us. It's not all of you, it's for us and
Yeah.
what we're doing. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Um, you've talked about this a little, but could you share a little bit more about how you've seen what the power of art is to help people like no matter the form of art because it's not
Mm-hmm.
just like what you think of drawing or whatever. Like just the
Mm-hmm.
power of art and integrative medicine to help families process their grief and their loss.
I think about this a lot. Sometimes art, well, Georgia O'Keeffe said it. She said art creates a safe container for her emotions. And she found that she could say things with colors and shapes that she didn't have words for. And I think that that's often a part of the healing process for me with people, and that art therapy conversation is it's hard to find words and sometimes we need a container. I loved that phrase you used, a vessel of hope. Sometimes we need that safe place for our feelings. And so on an individual level, it's that tactile connection, that our collective memories or stories or emotions. But I think on a cultural level, we use art in the same way. And a great example of that might be the memorial that's been created in New York at the Twin Towers. How would you ever say that in words? How could you put that in words? But when you stand before that, you hold that collective grief, with all the people here in our nation,
Mhm.
and you feel it and you feel connected to each other and to that experience in a way that I don't think we can give with words.
Absolutely. I agree. Whitney, this conversation has been wonderful, and I've really enjoyed getting
It's
to
been
know
a
you.
meander, hasn't it? Thank you.
Well, that's what I love about a conversation. It is a meander. So I've enjoyed learning more about you and the work that you're doing through the Legacy Art Circle. I have one question I ask everyone who comes on the show, but before I do, is there anything else you'd like to say that we haven't already talked about?
No, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share.
Oh, you're so welcome. Because the show is about getting to know our team members, what is one thing that others may not know about you?
Hmm. So that's a good question. Well, so I live on a farm, about 700 acres in Bourbon County, and I am not a farmer. I'm not even allowed to drive the tractor. So I'm a dog walker and a nature lover, and I love the space and the wild of the farm. But yeah, I'm not very useful there.
But it's a great space for creating art and
It's a
all those.
wonderful space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, Whitney, thank you again so very much. I look forward to learning more about this project and what you guys are doing with it.
I appreciate your support. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.